I'll ruin you. What happens when a mafia boss tries to rewrite the past? When hate twists into a dangerous obsession and the greatest threat is a memory fighting to surface? Can love survive a foundation of pure deceit? If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. The air in the warehouse tasted like dust and greed. Viktor Volkov, a man built from sharp lines and colder intentions, stood facing a rival. His wife, Amara, was there because he'd demanded it, a show of unity. She stood quietly, her posture perfect, her dark eyes watching everything, seeing everything. He hated that about her, the quiet intelligence, the way she looked at him like she could see the rot inside his soul. "The deal is simple," Viktor said, his voice like gravel. The rival, a man named Marco, laughed. "Nothing with you is simple, Volkov." Amara took a small step, her heel clicking on the concrete. It was the only warning. Victor saw Marco's man reach for his gun. Everything exploded into noise and movement. Victor shoved the heavy table over, reaching for his own weapon. But Amara was in the line of fire. He saw her eyes widen. Not with fear, but with a furious, bitter understanding. "He brought me here to die," that look said. Then the world turned orange and white. A deafening roar swallowed all sound. Heat slammed into Victor, throwing him back like a doll. The last thing he saw before the darkness was Amara's body, silhouetted against the fire. Victor woke up to a sterile white ceiling and pain. So much pain. His chest was wrapped, his arm in a cast. His face felt tight and strange. A mirror on the opposite wall showed him the damage, an angry red scar cutting from his temple down to his jaw. "Mr. Volkov," a doctor said, "you're awake. You have burns, broken ribs, a concussion, but you will recover." "My wife," Victor croaked, his throat raw from smoke. "Where is Amara?" The doctor's face changed. "She is alive, but there were complications. The blast, the head trauma. Mrs. Volkov has retrograde amnesia. She doesn't remember anything. Not the explosion, not her life, not you." Victor felt the world tilt. Amnesia, the brilliant, hateful neuroscientist who could dissect a lie with a glance, was a blank page. He was taken to her room. She was propped up on pillows, her head bandaged, looking out the window. She turned when he entered. Her eyes, the same beautiful dark eyes, were empty of all recognition. Empty of the cold contempt he was used to. They were just soft, confused. "Hello," she said, her voice quiet. "Amara," he said, the name sticking in his throat. She smiled a little. It was a shy, gentle thing. He had never seen her smile at him, not once in their 3-year marriage of mutual loathing. "The doctors told me. You're Victor, my husband." He just stared. His mind, always plotting, always calculating, began to spin. This was a reset, a terrifying, perfect reset. The woman who knew all his secrets, who hated him, was gone. In her place was this fragile, beautiful stranger. He made a decision in that instant, a terrible, selfish decision. He walked to her bedside, ignoring the pain in his body. He took her hand. Her fingers were cool and limp in his. "Yes," he said, his voice dropping, forcing it to be gentle. "I'm your husband, and I was so worried about you." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I don't remember anything. It's all just dark." He brushed the tear away with his thumb, a gesture that felt foreign and wrong. "It's okay," he lied. "I'm here. I'll help you remember. We'll start over." They discharged her a week later. Victor's head of security, David, a man who knew the truth of their marriage, drove them to the Volkov penthouse. Amara looked small in the vast, cold space. She walked slowly, touching the back of a chrome chair, a marble statue, as if trying to read its history. "It's so big," she whispered. "So clean." It wasn't a home. It was a fortress. Victor saw it through her new eyes and felt a pang of something like shame. He pushed it down. "This is us," he said, leading her to the master bedroom. Her suitcases from before, untouched since she'd packed them for a trip she never took, were in the closet. He'd had his housekeeper, Eleanor, remove all traces of their separate lives. The second bedroom was now an office. That first night, she stood in the middle of the bedroom, looking lost. "Do we share this room?" she asked, her cheeks flushing. "Of course," Victor said, his heart pounding. The idea of sharing a bed with the woman who used to flinch at his touch was insane. "You're my wife." He slept on top of the covers, stiff as a board, listening to her breathe. She cried quietly in the dark. He didn't know how to comfort her. So he just lay there, pretending to be asleep, feeling like a monster. The days began to form a new pattern. Victor, who usually spent every hour on his empire, started coming home for lunch. He found Amara in the library, trying to read a book but just staring at the pages. She was trying to cook with Elena, burning simple things. Her hands, which he knew could perform delicate lab procedures, now fumbled with a coffee maker. She was trying so hard. And she looked at him, with gratitude, with a desperate need for an anchor. One afternoon, he found her looking at old photos on his phone. He'd hastily deleted any that showed their distance, leaving only a few stiff public appearances. "We look happy here," she said, pointing to a gala photo where they stood side by side, not touching. "We were," he lied, his gut twisting. "Ah." She looked up at him, her eyes searching his scarred face. "You take care of me, even though I'm broken." "You're not broken," he said, and for a flickering second he meant it. The guilt was a living thing inside him, gnawing at his bones. He started to hate the men who came to the penthouse for business, men like James and Paul, his lieutenants. They knew the old Amara. They saw the new one, docile and clinging to Victor's arm, and their eyes held questions. He began to hold meetings elsewhere. He started to bring her gifts. Not the expensive cold jewels he used to throw at her to maintain appearances, but silly things. A book of poetry with a beautiful cover. A ridiculously soft blanket. A potted orchid for her window. One evening she was standing on the terrace, the wind in her hair. She looked so beautiful it hurt. He walked up behind her, not touching her. "I feel like I'm in a story," she said softly, "and you're the prince who rescued me from the tower. But I can't remember what the tower was." He stood beside her, looking out at the city he controlled through fear and violence. "Maybe the tower was just the accident, the explosion, and now you're free." She turned to him then and put her hand on his scarred cheek. He froze. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "No," he whispered. "I think you're brave," she said, "and kind." Those words shattered him. He was not brave. He was not kind. He was a thief, stealing the affection of a woman who would despise him if she knew. A dangerous, desperate need took root in his chest. He couldn't lose this. He couldn't lose her. He took her hand from his face and held it tightly. "Amara, listen to me." His voice was low, intense, trembling, with an emotion he didn't recognize. "You are mine. Do you understand? What we have, no other man will ever touch you. I will ruin you for other men. I will love you so completely, so fiercely that the idea of anyone else will feel like a shadow. I will make sure you never even look at another man." It was his threat, the one he'd rehearsed in his head 1,000 times, born from hatred and a need to possess and break. But now he poured every bit of his fear, his guilt, his newfound twisted obsession into it. It was no longer a threat. It was a vow, a dark, desperate promise. Amara didn't look afraid. She looked mesmerized. She leaned forward and rested her head on his chest, over his pounding heart. "Okay," she whispered, as if it were a comfort. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her for the first time not as a possession, but as a lifeline. He was falling in love with the ghost he had created. Weeks turned into a month. Victor was losing his edge. He was distracted during a shipment negotiation, almost costing his organization $1 million. David pulled him aside. "Boss, with respect, this is not sustainable. The men are talking. They say you've gone soft, That she, David nodded towards the penthouse, is making you weak. Victor's old temper flashed. She is my wife. What I do in my home is not your concern. It is when it affects the business, David said, holding his ground. The old Amara understood. This one. She's a liability. What if she remembers? Everything. A cold fear shot through Victor. She won't. You don't know that. He did know. He saw the cracks. Small things. She'd look at a knife while cooking, and her hand would pause, a shadow passing over her face. She heard a car backfire on the street, and she screamed, dropping a glass before looking confused at her own reaction. He started taking her out to remake their memories, to a quiet Italian restaurant. She stared at the red checkered tablecloth, her fork hovering over her pasta. This is familiar, she murmured. We came here for our anniversary. Victor lied smoothly. He pointed to a corner. We sat there. She looked at the corner, then back at him, a small, real smile touching her lips. It feels happy. He reached across the table and took her hand. It was. Later, at an art gallery, they stood before a violent, abstract painting. Splashes of red and black. Amara went very still. Her breathing became shallow. She swayed on her feet. Amara? Victor grabbed her elbow. Gunpowder, she whispered. And copper, the smell, it's in my head. She looked at him, her eyes wide and terrified. Victor, I think someone was shot. He pulled her away, his heart hammering. No, my love. No. It's from a movie we saw. You're confusing it. He held her close, whispering lies into her hair, feeling her tremble. The ghost of the old Amara was knocking on the door of her mind, and it terrified them both. That night, for the first time, she didn't just accept his comfort. She sought it. She kissed him. It was hesitant, innocent. The kiss of the woman she was now. But Victor, consumed by his need to chase away the ghosts, kissed her back with a fervour that surprised him. It felt like claiming, like sealing his dark vow. Afterwards, she slept curled against him. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the taste of her on his lips. He was in deep, dangerous waters. He was no longer pretending for strategy. He was pretending to survive. He needed her to love him, the real him, the monster. And he was starting to believe she could. The first major crack appeared on a rainy Tuesday. Victor was in his study, on a call discussing a problem with a nightclub owner named Daniel who was skimming profits. His voice was cold, lethal. You have until tomorrow night, Daniel, to bring me every cent you stole. If you're short by $1, I will take it from your flesh. Do you understand me? He ended the call and turned. Amara was standing in the doorway holding 2 mugs of tea. Her face was pale, she had heard. Victor! Her voice was small. Who was that? He schooled his features into calm. A business associate. He made a very bad mistake. I was just making sure he fixes it. You sounded different, she said, walking in and setting the mugs down. Her hands were shaking. It's just business, Lyubov Moya, he said, using the Russian endearment. He tried to pull her into a hug, but she was stiff. She looked up at his desk, at the stark computer, the gun in the unlocked drawer he'd forgotten to close. Her eyes lingered on it. Then she looked back at his face, at the scar she now traced with her fingers every night. A flicker of something hard and intelligent passed behind her eyes. It was there for a second, then gone, replaced by confusion. I used to hate guns, she said quietly, not as a question, but as a fact pulled from the deep. You did, he admitted carefully. You thought they were crude. She nodded slowly, then picked up her tea and left the room without another word. Victor sat down, his legs weak. She was remembering. He decided to accelerate his plan, to bury the old world under a mountain of new, beautiful memories. He planned a weekend away at a secluded lakeside house. It was peaceful, idyllic. He was tender, attentive. He cooked for her. They walked in the woods. He told her stories of a happy childhood that never existed, of a loving courtship that was pure fiction. On their last night under a blanket of stars, she seemed truly at peace. I love you, Victor, she said, the words clear and sure. He felt a jolt of pure, unadulterated triumph. He had done it. He had won. I love you, Amara, he said back, and in that moment he believed it with his whole broken soul. The collapse began the moment they returned home. A package was delivered. For Amara. It was a small padded envelope with no return address. Victor, paranoid, opened it himself. Inside was a USB drive and a note, written in neat print. A memory you might have lost. Dr. Aki. Volkov? His blood ran cold. He shoved the drive into his laptop. It was a single video file. Security footage from a nightclub he owned over a year ago. The angle showed a private booth. There he was, the old Victor, cold and arrogant, and there was Amara, the old Amara. She was wearing a silver dress, her posture rigid. He was leaning close, speaking to her. The footage had no sound, but the meaning was clear. He said something. She replied, her face a mask of contempt. Then, in a move of shocking violence, he backhanded her across the face. Victor watched, nausea rising in his throat. He remembered that night. She had insulted him in public, questioned his authority in front of his men. He had struck her to re-establish control. She had just touched her cheek, looked at him with pure, undiluted hatred, and walked away. The video ended. He deleted it, destroyed the USB drive, but it was too late. The seed was planted. Who had sent it? A rival? A disloyal soldier? It didn't matter. The damage was done. Amara came into the study, humming. Elena said a package came for me. It was nothing, Victor said too quickly. Wrong address. I had David send it back. She looked at him, and he saw the first flicker of doubt in her new, gentle eyes. Oh, she said. Okay. The next few days were a slow unraveling. She became quiet, watchful. She started asking Eleanor questions about before the accident. Eleanor, loyal to Victor, gave vague answers. But Amara was a scientist. She noticed inconsistencies. Then she found the safe, their real safe, hidden behind a painting in his study. He'd forgotten to lock it properly after taking out cash. She came to him as he was getting ready for bed, her face pale, holding a single sheet of paper. What is this, Victor? It was their prenuptial agreement. A cold, clinical document outlining the separation of assets. A marriage in name only for business alliances. At the bottom, both their signatures. Hers was sharp, angry, definitive. It's a legal document, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. For business. It doesn't mean anything about us. It says our marriage is a strategic union, she read, her voice trembling. It says I waive all claim to your enterprises upon divorce. It says we maintain separate residences. Victor, we lived separately? He moved towards her. Amara, that was before. Things changed. We fell in love after we signed that. Did we? She asked, taking a step back. The movement was a knife in his heart. She was pulling away. The ghost was in the room now. I had a separate residence. Where? What was it like? Why don't you ever talk about my work? The doctors said I was a neuroscientist. Where was my lab? Where are my things? He had no good answers. Only more lies. The explosion, it destroyed a lot. Your lab was in that building. I wanted to protect you from the pain. She stared at him, and he watched as the gentle, trusting woman he'd built began to crumble before his eyes. The intelligent, skeptical woman she had always been was pushing through. I need to see, she said, her voice stronger. I need to see my old home, the one from before. No, he said, the command slipping out, the voice of the Mafia boss. It's not safe. Her eyes widened at his tone. Not safe from what, Victor? From my own memories. The fight was silent and terrible. He couldn't give in. If she saw her old apartment, filled with her independent life, books on criminal psychology, she'd been studying him, pictures of her friends, her family who he'd isolated her from. It would all be over. He refused. She locked herself in the bedroom. Victor spent the night pacing his study, drinking whiskey, his mind racing. He could force her to stay. He had the power. But the thought of seeing fear in her eyes, the fear he now realized he never wanted to see again, made him sick. David called. "Boss, we have the Daniel situation contained, but he's talking. He's saying you've lost your nerve, that a woman has made you weak. Others are listening." "Handle it," Victor snarled. "How?" David asked, and the implication was clear. Permanently. The old Victor would have given the order without a thought. The new Victor, the one who loved a ghost, hesitated. "Just scare him. Make sure he disappears from the city." "That's not the message we need to send," David said, disappointment clear. Victor hung up. He was losing control of everything. His empire, his mind, his wife. In the morning, Amara was gone. Not from the penthouse, but from his reach. She was sitting in the living room, dressed, her suitcase by the door. Her eyes were red from crying, but they were dry now. They were the eyes of a stranger. A resolute stranger. "I called a taxi," she said. "I'm going to Mercy Hospital. Dr. Evans, my neurologist, said I could come in for more tests, to help with my memory." "I'll take you," Victor said, panic clawing at his throat. "No, I need to do this alone. Amara, please, don't do this." She looked at him then, really looked at him. "Who are you, Victor?" she asked, and the question held a world of pain. "The man who loves me? Or the man in the safe who made me sign a paper to keep me out of his life? Or the man on the phone who threatens to cut people?" He had no answer that could save him. The taxi came. She picked up her suitcase. He stood, helpless, in the middle of the room he owned, powerless to stop her. "I'll ruin you for other men," he whispered, the vow now a broken, pathetic echo. She paused at the door, her back to him. "Maybe you already have," she said, her voice hollow, "but not in the way you wanted." The door closed behind her. Victor stood frozen in the silence of the penthouse. The sound of the elevator doors closing felt like a guillotine dropping. She was gone. The gentle, loving Amara he had built in this cage had walked out, and she had taken all the light with her. He didn't move for a full minute. Then the monster woke up. He grabbed his phone. "David, Amara is in a yellow taxi heading to Mercy Hospital. Follow her. Don't let her see you. I want to know every step she takes, everyone she talks to. Report to me immediately." "On it, boss," Victor paced. The scar on his face throbbed. He looked at the orchid on the windowsill, the stupid soft blanket on the couch. Symbols of his lie. He wanted to smash them all. Instead, he went to the bar and poured another whiskey, his hand steady now with cold purpose. The panic was hardening into a plan. He would get her back. He had to. At Mercy Hospital, Amara sat in a clean, bright examination room. It felt more familiar than her own home. Dr. Evans, a kind woman with glasses, smiled at her. "Amara, it's good to see you. How are the headaches?" "They're there," Amara said. "But it's more than that. Memories. Feelings. They don't make sense." "Tell me." Amara took a deep breath. She talked about the feeling of gunpowder and copper, the red checkered tablecloth that felt like a lie. The sound of Victor's voice on the phone, so cold it made her blood freeze. She didn't mention the safe or the prenup. That felt too private, too dangerous. "And the man in your dreams? The one with the scar?" Dr. Evans asked, looking at her notes. "It's Victor. My husband." The word felt strange in her mouth now. "But in the dreams? I'm afraid of him. I hate him. I'm trying to get away from him." Dr. Evans nodded slowly. "Trauma is complex. The brain is trying to protect you. The explosion was with him. It's possible your mind is linking him with the danger even if he wasn't the cause. But what if he was?" The question slipped out, quiet and terrified. The doctor paused. "Has he hurt you? Since the accident?" "No. He's been gentle, loving. But it feels like a performance. And I found things. Legal papers. He gets angry when I ask about my past." Dr. Evans's face became more serious. "Amara, your recovery is the priority. Your safety is the priority. Do you feel unsafe at home?" Did she? The thought of Victor's arms around her now made her shiver, but the thought of never going back made her chest ache with a confusing loneliness. "I don't know," she whispered. "I'd like to run some new scans," Dr. Evans said. And I think it could be helpful for you to talk to someone, a therapist, to sort through these feelings in a safe place. A safe place. Amara nodded. Yes, please. David's voice came through Victor's phone. She's still at the hospital. She went in for scans. She's been there 2 hours. A woman in a lab coat went in with her. Not a nurse. Looked like a therapist or a social worker. Victor's grip tightened on the phone. A therapist. They would pull his lies apart, thread by thread. Where is she going after? Don't know yet, boss. An hour later, David called again. She's leaving. She got into a taxi. She's not heading back your way. She's going downtown. Follow her. Victor felt a burning, possessive rage. Where was she going? To a friend he didn't know about? To a family member he'd cut off? The thought of her sharing her doubts, her fears, with someone else was unbearable. I'll ruin you for other men. The vow echoed in his skull. It meant no one else could have her thoughts, her trust, her secrets. The taxi stopped in front of a small, elegant apartment building. A doorman let Amara in. David read the building name and reported it. Victor knew that building. Ice filled his veins. It was her building. Her old apartment. The one she'd insisted on keeping. A condition of their marriage bargain. He'd paid for it, but never stepped foot inside. He'd had it watched in the early days until he was sure she was no threat. She still had the key. Of course she did. It was in her old purse, which Eleanor had packed away. Amara must have found it. He saw it all in his mind. She would walk into her old life, see her books, her photos, her clothes, the life she had without him. It would all be over. Boss, what do you want me to do? David asked. Stay there. Watch. If she leaves, follow her. If anyone goes in to see her, I want to know. Victor ended the call. He had to go there. He had to stop this. But barging in would confirm every fear. He needed a reason, a caring husband, reason. He called her phone. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. This is Amara. Leave a message. Her voice, recorded before the accident, was cool and professional. It was a voice that hated him. He called again. Voicemail. He sent a text. Amara, please, I'm worried. Tell me where you are. Let me come to you. No reply. The silence was a torment. He imagined her in that apartment, pieces of her old self clicking into place like puzzle pieces, forming a picture of a woman who despised Viktor Volkov. He couldn't wait. He grabbed his coat and headed for the garage. Amara stood in the middle of her old living room. It was dusty but familiar. Deeply, wonderfully familiar. This was her space. It smelled like her sandalwood candles and old books. She walked slowly, touching things. A framed photo on a shelf, her and a group of friends, laughing at a picnic. She didn't remember their names, but she felt a warmth in her chest. Another photo. Her graduation in a cap and gown, holding a diploma. Dr. Amara Jones. Jones, her maiden name. She'd never taken his. She found her laptop dead. She plugged it in. While it powered up, she went to her bookshelf. The titles were a biography of her mind, Neurobiology of Memory, Criminal Psychopathology, The Anatomy of Deception, textbooks, thrillers, and then a plain black notebook. She opened it. It was a journal. The handwriting was hers, sharp and clear. The first entry she saw was dated just a few weeks before the explosion. Victor is escalating. The dinner with the Italians was a disaster. He thinks I'm a prop. A black wife to soften his image, to make him look modern. He told me to smile more. I told him to go to hell. The look in his eyes. I think he could kill me. Not in a rage, calmly. If it became convenient, I need to be smarter. I need more evidence before I can go to the authorities. The prenup is a chain, but it's also a map. It lists his legitimate shell companies. I can follow the money. Amara's hands shook. She turned the page. Met with Jessica today. She's scared, but she'll help. She worked in his accounts department before he fired her. She confirmed the money trail leads to the docks, to the warehouses, the ones that smell of spice and lies. I'm getting close. I can feel him watching me. I have to be careful. Jessica. The name sparked something. A face. A woman with kind eyes and nervous hands. Amara felt dizzy. She wasn't just a wife. She'd been an investigator. She'd been trying to bring him down. Her laptop screen glowed to life. It asked for a password. She tried a few things, then, on a whim, typed Liberty 888. It worked. The desktop was neat. Folders, research, teaching, personal, Project V. Her finger hovered over the mouse. Then she clicked on Project V. It was full of files, spreadsheets, bank statement scans, photographs of men, Victor's men, like David, James, Paul, entering warehouse numbers, and audio files, dates. With a trembling hand, she put on headphones and clicked the most recent audio file. There was rustling, then her own voice, hushed and tense. Test recording. Day 17. Subject is meeting with associates James and Paul in the study. I've placed the device in the vase. God, I hope this works. A moment of silence, then voices clear as day. Victor's voice. The shipment comes in Thursday, 500 kilos. Daniel at the docks gets 10% for looking the other way. Make sure he knows it's 10% of the profit, not the weight. Last time he tried to get clever. James. He's getting greedy, boss. Victor. Then make an example, not him. Someone he likes. His brother drives a taxi, doesn't he? Have a little accident. Send Daniel the hospital bill. He'll understand the new math. Cold, calm, murderous. Amara ripped the headphones off, gasping for air. She felt sick. This was the man who held her at night. This was the man who told her he loved her. This was the man who made her soup when she had a headache. He was a monster, and she had known it. She had been trying to put him in prison. The doorbell rang. She jumped, her heart slamming against her ribs. She shut the laptop lid. She crept to the door, looking through the peephole. Victor. He stood there, his hands in his coat pockets. He looked anxious. He looked human. It was the best performance of his life. Amara? Lyubov Moya? Please, I know you're in there. I just want to talk, I'm so worried. She backed away from the door, silent. Her eyes darted around the apartment. It was a crime scene. Her journal was open on the coffee table. The laptop was on. The doorbell rang again, longer this time. Amara, please, or I'll have to call the building manager. I'll say I'm your husband and I'm worried for your safety. They'll let me in. He would do it. She knew he would. She had to think. The old Amara, the one in the journal, would know what to do. She took a deep, steadying breath. She had to be that woman now. She walked to the door and opened it, just a crack, the chain still on. He looked at her through the gap, his eyes pleading. You scared me. I needed space, she said, her voice flat. I get that, but here, this old place, it's full of bad memories, Amara, of when we were struggling, before we found each other. The lies flowed so easily from him. She almost believed him. The new, gentle Amara inside her wanted to believe him. But the words in the journal were screaming in her head. I found my journal, she said, watching his face. A flicker, just a tiny flicker of panic in his eyes. It was gone in a second, replaced by concern. Your journal, that's great. Maybe that will help you remember the good times. It talks about a woman named Jessica, Amara said. She worked for you. Do you know her? Victor's face went perfectly still. Jessica? I don't think so. Maybe a friend of yours? She worked in your accounts department. You fired her. Now the mask slipped, just a little. His jaw tightened. Amara, I fire a lot of people. It's business. This is why this place is bad for you. It's stirring up confused old memories. Come home. Let's talk there. I'm not coming home, Victor. The words hung in the air. He stared at her. The pleading look vanished, replaced by something darker, emptier. What did you say? I said I'm not coming home. I need to be here. To remember. No, he said, and his voice was quiet, final. The voice of the boss. You're coming home with me. Now. Open the door. Amara. Or what? She challenged, her old fire sparking for the first time since the explosion. He leaned closer to the crack in the door. He spoke softly so only she could hear. "Or I will break this door down, and I will carry you out, and I will burn this apartment and everything in it to the ground, and then I will take you home, and you will never leave my sight again. Do you understand? Now, open the door." She saw the truth in his eyes. He would do it all. The fear was real now, cold and sharp. The old Amara's fear. But the old Amara was also brave. She looked past him, down the hallway. She saw David leaning against the wall near the elevator watching. She was trapped. She made a decision. She had to play for time. She had to be the gentle Amara again just a little longer. Her shoulders slumped. She let tears fill her eyes, real tears of fear and confusion. "You're scaring me, Victor," she whispered, the gentle wife returning. He saw the tears and his expression changed again, twisting with guilt and that desperate obsession. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. I can't lose you, Amara, please. Come home." She nodded slowly, sniffling. Okay, just let me get my things and use the bathroom, please." He hesitated, but the sight of her tears weakened him. He nodded. 2 minutes. I'll wait right here." She closed the door. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it would burst. 2 minutes. She ran to the coffee table. She grabbed her journal. She ripped out the last 10 most incriminating pages. She folded them small. She shoved the journal under the couch cushion. Her laptop. She couldn't take it. He'd see. She unplugged it, wrapped the cord and shoved it under the couch with the journal. The audio files, the evidence, it was all on there. She had the folded pages in her hand. She needed to hide them. She looked around frantically. Her coat. She put it on, shoved the pages deep into the inner pocket. She flushed the toilet to make sound, then splashed water on her face. She took one last look at her apartment. Her safe place. She was leaving it for the lion's den. She opened the door. Victor was still there. He tried to smile, but it looked painful. He held out his hand. She took it. His grip was firm, possessive. He led her down the hall, past David. David nodded, his face unreadable. In the elevator, Victor pulled her close, kissing her hair. "It's going to be okay," he murmured. "We're going to be okay. I'll make you forget all this bad stuff. I'll ruin you for other men." She leaned into him, playing her part, but inside the old Amara was wide awake, and she was planning her escape. The car ride was silent. When they got back to the penthouse, it felt like a prison. "I'm tired," Amara said. "I'm going to lie down." "Of course," Victor said. "I'll have Elena bring you some tea." He watched her go to the bedroom and close the door. He stood in the living room, his mind racing. She had been in that apartment for almost an hour. What had she seen? What had she read? She mentioned Jessica. That was a disaster waiting to happen. Jessica knew too much. He called David. "Jessica Chen, the accountant I let go last year. Find her. I want to know where she is, what she's doing, who she's talking to. Now." "On it." Victor poured a drink. The game had changed. The gentle pretense was cracking. He might have to switch to a different kind of control. The thought made him feel sick, but the thought of losing her was worse. In the bedroom, Amara locked the door. She took out the folded journal pages. She read them again, her hands shaking. The last entry was the most chilling. "He knows something is wrong. He's having me followed. I think David is doing it. I can't meet Jessica anymore. I've copied all the files. I've sent an encrypted backup to a safe place. If anything happens to me, it goes to the FBI. I've set a dead man's switch. God, I hope I'm just being paranoid, but I don't think I am. Victor Volkov doesn't love. He owns, and he destroys what he can't own. A dead man's switch, an encrypted backup sent somewhere, the FBI. The old Amara had been brilliant and brave. And she had set a trap for him. But where was the backup? And what was the trigger? The journal didn't say. She needed to find Jessica. She heard Victor's footsteps outside her door. He paused. Then he knocked softly. "Amara? Tea's here." "Just a minute," she called, hiding the pages under the mattress. She had to be careful. She had to be the old Amara, but she had to make Victor see only the new one. It was the only way to survive long enough to remember. She opened the door and forced a small, tired smile. "Thank you," she said, taking the tea from Eleanor. Victor stood there, studying her face, looking for lies. She met his gaze, letting her eyes stay soft, confused, a little sad. He finally nodded. "Rest. We'll have dinner later, just you and me." He left, and she closed the door, leaning against it. She was in a war, and her only weapons were a few pieces of paper and a memory that was slowly, painfully, coming back to kill her. Dinner was a quiet, tense affair. Victor watched Amara pick at her food, her mind clearly elsewhere. He tried to make conversation to rebuild the fragile bridge, but his words felt hollow even to himself. He could see the distance in her eyes. The journal had planted a seed, and it was growing. "I'm going to turn in early," Amara said, standing before dessert was served. "Of course," Victor replied, his voice tight. He didn't follow her. He went to his study and waited. David called just before midnight. "I found Jessica Chen. She's living in a small town 2 hours north. She's scared. She wouldn't say much on the phone, but she said Amara contacted her last week." Victor's blood ran cold. "Last week? That's impossible. She said it was an email from an anonymous account asking if they could talk about Project V again. Jessica never replied. She was too afraid." But Amara didn't remember last week, unless... She was starting to. The email must have been sent automatically, some kind of system set up by the old Amara. A dead man's switch beginning to activate. "Handle it," Victor said, the old cold command returning. "Make sure she stays quiet, permanently." There was a long pause on the line. "Boss, are you sure?" "Do it." He hung up. The decision should have brought him clarity. Instead, it just made him feel emptier. He was making the choice. The monster over the man. He was choosing to protect his lie by burying the truth deeper. He poured another drink, but it tasted like ash. In the bedroom, Amara was not sleeping. She was at the vanity, staring at her own reflection. A face came to her mind, Jessica's face. They were in a cafe, talking in hushed tones. Jessica was passing her a flash drive under the table. "Be careful, Amara. He's not just a businessman. He's a predator." The memory was so vivid it stole her breath. She knew then. She knew Victor had sent David to find Jessica, and she knew what handle it meant. The old Amara's plan snapped into place in her mind. The encrypted backup wasn't just files. It was a timed release. If she didn't log in to a specific secure server and reset a counter every 30 days, the files would be sent to 3 major news outlets and the FBI. The explosion had happened on the 29th day. The files had been sent out into the world weeks ago. They were a ticking bomb, and someone, somewhere, was already looking at them. She had to get out. Now. She dressed quickly in dark clothes. She took the folded journal pages and tucked them into her bra. She crept to the bedroom door, listening. Silence. She slipped out into the dark hallway. The penthouse was vast. She moved like a ghost towards the service entrance near the kitchen, the one she'd seen Eleanor use. Her heart hammered against the papers on her chest. She was almost at the door when the hallway lights blazed on. Victor stood at the other end, still in his suit, his face a mask of weary devastation. He wasn't holding a gun. He just looked broken. "Going somewhere?" he asked, his voice quiet. Amara froze. "I needed air." "You're lying." He took a step forward. "You remember, don't you? Not everything, but enough." She stood her ground, the old Amara's strength flooding her veins. "I remember you hit me. I remember you threatened people. I remember I was gathering evidence to put you in prison. I remember I was afraid of you." Each word was a blow. He flinched. "That wasn't us. Not at the end. What we had after the accident. That was real. I was real." "It was built on a lie," she cried, tears of anger finally spilling over. "You stole my mind, Victor. You saw I was empty and you tried to build a puppet. You don't love me. You love the idea of a woman who has to love you back, because she has no other choice. I do love you, he roared, the sound raw and painful. It started as a lie, but it became real. Every moment, every touch, it became the most real thing I've ever had. He moved towards her, not with threat, but with a desperate need. He reached for her. Instinctively, she backed away, her hand hitting the wall. Don't touch me. He stopped, his hand falling to his side. He looked at the scar on his own hand, a match to the one on his face. Where will you go? He whispered. The police? The FBI? Do you think my enemies won't find you the second you step into the light? You'll be dead in a week without my protection. I'd rather be dead and free than alive and your prisoner, she spat. The words hung between them, final and absolute. He saw it then. The woman he hated and the woman he loved were the same person, and she would never, ever be his. The intercom from the building's front desk buzzed, sharp and loud in the silence. A nervous voice crackled through. Mr. Volkov? Sorry to disturb you, sir. There are, federal agents here, with a warrant. They're on their way up. Victor closed his eyes. The bomb had detonated. The files had been opened. He looked at Amara and a sad, twisted smile touched his lips. You did it. Even with no memory, you still ruined me. He sounded almost proud. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and took out a thick envelope. He threw it on the floor between them. Cash. Fake passport. Keys to a car parked in garage level B. Spot 42. It's clean. Take the service elevator down. Leave before they get here. Amara stared at the envelope, then at him. Why? Because my vow stands, he said, his voice a low rasp. I'll ruin you for other men, and no other man will ever have you if you're in a federal prison or a witness protection program, or if you're dead. He met her gaze, his eyes blazing with a final terrible possession. So run. Disappear. Live a life where every man you meet will be a pale shadow of the one who loved you enough to let you go and hate him. That is my ruin. That is your life now. Sirens wailed faintly from the streets below. The elevator dinged down the hall. Amara didn't hesitate. She snatched the envelope off the floor, turned, and fled through the service door. It clicked shut behind her just as the main elevator doors opened and voices filled the penthouse. Viktor Volkov stood calmly, hands in his pockets, facing the agents as they poured in. He didn't look at the door she'd left through. He had already said goodbye to the only thing that ever mattered, in the only way a monster like him could. He had promised to ruin her, and as the cuffs clicked cold around his wrists, he knew he finally had. She was free, but she would never be free of him. And in the twisted wreckage of his heart, that had to be enough. Thank you for watching. Did Amara make the right choice by running? If you were in her shoes, could you ever trust love again? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what you would have done. Don't forget to subscribe for more twisted tales of love and revenge.